For longer than memory could hold, the Federation ruled the stars. It was old, proud, and vast, spreading across 1,000 systems and 100 races. Its banners hung in every sky, its ships crossed every trade route, and its councils decided the fate of entire worlds. It had no enemies left, only bureaucracy, comfort, and the slow rot that comes when no one dares to change anything. To the people who lived under it, life was stable, but dull. The same traditions repeated, the same words were spoken, the same laws renewed year after year. Innovation had become dangerous because it threatened balance. The Federation had learned to fear change. It had become a peaceful machine that ran on old gears, unable to see that they were wearing thin. Most citizens believed that their history was complete, that nothing remained to surprise them. They thought the galaxy had already revealed all its secrets, but there was one story that the archives mentioned only in whispers, the story of the lost world called Earth, and the strange species once known as humans. According to the official records, humanity had destroyed itself ages ago, in wars that burned its own system. The Federation had sent explorers to confirm it, found silence, and moved on. That was the end of it, or so everyone believed. But truth has a way of waiting. Sometimes it waits longer than anyone expects. Far from the busy trade routes deep beyond the edge of mapped space, a small survey ship drifted through a region of forgotten stars. It was on a dull assignment, mapping radiation fields left from ancient battles. The crew expected nothing but dust and numbers. Then their scanners caught something strange. It was a repeating signal, faint but sharp, coming from an area where no beacon should exist. At first they thought it was interference, but the signal had structure. It pulsed in steady rhythm and too regular to be natural. The pattern repeated every 61 seconds, changing slightly each time as if learning from itself. They recorded it and sent the data to the nearest outpost. The analyst who studied it grew quiet. The signal was not random. It was coded in a format that no current race used, yet it was unmistakably intelligent. After weeks of study, one linguist recognized something familiar. The coding system matched fragments found in ancient Federation databases, the kind once used by early human probes. The news spread quietly among scientists. Could it be that something human had survived? The Federation Council did not like rumors. It ordered silence until confirmation, but curiosity is stronger than command. Within months, secret expeditions began heading toward the signal's source. The explorers expected ruins, maybe leftover satellites or derelict machines. What they found was stranger. Around a dark star, long thought dead, floated a small field of metallic debris. Yet among the debris were intact objects, black, smooth, and cold, with surfaces that swallowed light. When approached, the objects emitted faint power readings. They were not dead. They were sleeping. When the team touched one with a scanning beam, it came alive. Light shimmered across its surface. It rotated slowly, aligning with the ship. Then every sensor went white. The ship lost power for several seconds. When systems recovered, the object was gone. It had simply vanished into the void. But in its place, the ship's computers found something new, a short transmission stored deep in their data cores. It had overwritten no systems, caused no damage. Just one message, made of an ancient human language long thought extinct. When translated, it read, "We remember." The message reached the Federation Science Council, and for the first time in centuries, fear entered their calm halls. They had built their peace on the belief that all chaos was gone from the stars. But the humans, if they truly still existed, were the old chaos reborn. They had once been creators of wonders and destroyers of worlds. Their minds were unpredictable, their will unmatched. The idea that they had survived the collapse of Sol was unthinkable. Still, officials dismissed it as a hoax. One message did not mean survival. They ordered another expedition, this time with warships escorting the scientists. When they reached the dead system, they found something that should have been impossible. The old solar stations around the frozen planets were active again. Energy readings glowed from the dark side of moons. Long-buried mines were opening. Machines that had not moved for millennia were digging, building, repairing. No life signs, no signals, only silent activity. One commander ordered a probe launch to investigate. The probe flew close to the third planet, the world once called Earth. From orbit, it looked dead, covered in ice and dust. But beneath the surface, the probe's sensors detected immense structures, kilometers wide, pulsing with heat. Before it could transmit more data, its feed cut off. The last image it sent back was of something moving beneath the crust. A shifting pattern of lights forming symbols that no alien could read, but every human would have understood. Home. Panic spread through the mission crew. They retreated, leaving automated drones behind to watch. Within days, all contact was lost with those drones. The data they sent before silence showed energy spikes rising far beyond what any known reactor could produce. It was as if the entire system had awoken. In the following months, faint transmissions began to ripple through deep space. They were not calls for help, not greeting, just bursts of data repeating in tight rhythms. They appeared in old human trade routes in abandoned sectors, even inside Federation network nodes. When decoded, the patterns contained fragments of ancient human knowledge, chemistry, physics, digital design. They were not weapons. They were reminders, proof that something intelligent was rebuilding from the ashes. The Federation tried to block the information, fearing panic. But the data spread faster than they could contain it. Civilian researchers copied it, shared it, studied it. The results were shocking. The technology encoded within those fragments was beyond anything the Federation possessed. It was simple in concept but powerful in efficiency, exactly how humans had once worked. Within months, private inventors were using the fragments to create faster engines, cleaner energy cells, and smarter computers. The Federation's most advanced achievements suddenly looked outdated. Leaders met in emergency sessions. They debated whether to open contact or seal off the region. Some argued that if humanity had truly returned, they might bring progress again. Others feared the opposite, that they would bring conflict. The Federation, built on comfort, did not know how to face something that could change everything. Meanwhile, in the far dark where no eyes watched, lights multiplied. Ships unlike any known design moved between dead worlds, leaving trails of blue fire. They did not answer hails. They did not interfere with trade routes. But they watched. They mapped. They learned. Across the Federation's outer colonies, rumors grew. Miners spoke of ghost signals guiding their scanners toward rich veins of metal. Traders found their routes suddenly corrected by invisible beacons that saved them from storms. Something, or someone, was helping quietly from the shadows. And when those who benefited checked the source, they found an old symbol embedded in the data, a single blue circle surrounded by 12 smaller ones. It matched the insignia of an ancient Terran alliance once lost in time. People began to talk. Ordinary citizens, tired of slow councils and endless rules, started saying the unthinkable. Maybe the humans had come back. Maybe they had never left. Maybe they were the reason the stars still had order. In the grand halls of the Federation capital, the leaders gathered in secret. The High Speaker looked around at the worried faces and said softly, "If they have returned, then everything we are is about to be tested." No one spoke after that. They all knew what it meant. The Federation had ruled for eons because no one else had challenged it. Now something old and forgotten was stirring. Something that had once been human. Outside, the stars looked the same as they always had. The trade fleet still glided between worlds. The songs of peace still played in public squares. But those who listened carefully to the deep static between communications could sometimes hear faint echoes repeating over and over, just below the noise. The words were old, spoken in a tongue long erased from official records. But the meaning was clear even to those who could not translate it. Humanity was waking up. The silence that followed the first human signals was heavy. Across the Federation, everyone waited for an explanation, but none came. The signals stopped as suddenly as they had begun, leaving behind only questions. The Federation's leaders tried to calm the public by calling it a data anomaly, but no one believed that anymore. The stars had started whispering again, and everyone knew it. Scientists across many worlds began working in secret. They wanted to understand the human signals more deeply. They decoded fragments that hinted at coordinates, distant, unreachable sectors wrapped in radiation storms. But every time they tried to trace them, the signals changed, as if something was watching their efforts and moving just out of reach. The researchers grew uneasy. The feeling spread that whatever had awakened in the dark didn't want to be found yet. Months passed, then years. The Federation slowly returned to its calm rhythm, but beneath that calm, restlessness grew. People talked about humanity as if they were ghosts, old myths that had suddenly come alive. Stories spread among the miners and traders at the edge of space. They said strange ships had been seen, black as night, silent as shadows, moving with speed beyond physics. They left no light, no signature, only a faint hum that lingered after they passed. Some called them Watchers. Others called them Guardians. The Federation, however, called them impossible, but impossibility didn't stop fear. The High Council ordered all exploration beyond the old human sector to stop. Patrol fleets were stationed along the borders. Officially, it was for safety reasons. In truth, it was because the Federation was scared of what it might find. It had grown too used to being the only power left. Now even a rumor of humanity was enough to shake its confidence. Still, curiosity is a force stronger than fear. A small independent crew, scientists and explorers, ignored the Council's orders and went to search the abandoned sectors. They believed that understanding humanity's return could help the Federation grow again. They were not soldiers or politicians, just people who wanted answers. They traveled for months through dead space, finding nothing but silent stations and old wrecks. Then one day, their long-range sensors caught a strange distortion, something bending space ahead of them. When they approached, they found a structure the size of a city floating alone in the void. It was shaped like a ring, made of dark metal that absorbed light. The material was unknown, far stronger than any alloy in the Federation's records. The ring pulsed with low vibrations, almost like breathing. The team sent drones to scan it. When the drones entered the ring's center, their feeds went blank for a moment, then returned showing stars, but not the same stars. They were seeing another system, a living system filled with lights, movement, and stations. It was like a window into another part of space. It was not a relic. It was a gate. Before they could react, a deep voice came through their communication system. It wasn't loud, but it filled the entire ship with vibration. It said only one word: observe. Then the connection ended. The ring faded from sensors, leaving only empty space. The explorers tried to locate it again, but there was nothing. It was gone, as if it had never been there. When they returned, their recordings shocked the Federation. The gate, the voice, the energy readings, all undeniable. Suddenly, the idea that humanity had truly returned was no longer myth. It was fact. But instead of bringing excitement, it brought confusion and fear. The Federation's leaders argued endlessly. Some wanted to reach out, believing humans might help restore progress. Others demanded the destruction of anything linked to them. The Council was divided for the first time in centuries. Ordinary people, however, were fascinated. They felt a strange connection to humanity, a species long gone yet somehow familiar. Humans had once been like them, struggling, learning, building. Their story was a mirror of everything the galaxy had forgotten. Across different worlds, artists painted the symbol that had appeared in the signals, a blue circle surrounded by 12 smaller ones. People began wearing it as jewelry, marking it on walls, calling it the sign of the return. It became a symbol of hope for those tired of the slow, lifeless Federation order. As fear grew among the rulers, hope grew among the people. Then, without warning, the humans revealed themselves again. A massive transmission appeared on every communication network across the Federation. It wasn't an attack or a demand. It was an image, the solar system that had once been called Sol. It showed the sun burning bright again, planets moving in orbit, stations glimmering between them. Humanity had rebuilt its home, and below the image were words written in many alien languages. We remember peace. We remember silence. We return. The transmission lasted only a few seconds, then vanished. But its impact was unstoppable. Across the Federation, people began asking why humanity had hidden for so long, and what they wanted now. The Council had no answers. The galaxy had lived under one rule for eons, and now something ancient was changing the rhythm of time itself. The Federation tried to send ambassadors, but none came back. Their ships disappeared in the same dark sectors where the signals originated. There was no evidence of violence, only silence. It was as if the humans simply took them and erased their traces. The Council, desperate, tried to portray humanity as a threat to keep control. They called them ghosts of war, machines of the past, meant a danger to the stars. But people didn't believe it. The humans so far had harmed no one. They had only shown signs of strength and order, and deep down everyone could sense that they were watching. Soon after, changes began across the galaxy. Federation systems started to malfunction, not from attack but from quiet corrections. Energy grids began to run more efficiently. Communication lag vanished. Ships suddenly traveled faster without upgrades. The improvements were invisible, automatic, unexplainable. Engineers realized the entire digital network of the Federation was being subtly rewritten. No one could stop it. The code was too advanced, too perfect. It wasn't breaking anything. It was fixing everything. When technicians finally traced the origin of the new code, they found it was written in an old Terran programming language. That discovery made the Council panic. The humans were not only awake, they were inside the Federation systems, helping them, guiding them, reshaping them. And they were doing it quietly, without asking for permission. On smaller worlds, life started to improve. Cities ran cleaner. Trade routes became safer. Accidents dropped to near zero. People began to say that the humans were watching over them, not as rulers but as caretakers. The Council tried to take credit for the improvements, but no one believed them anymore. The citizens saw the truth. Someone else was keeping order now. Someone who didn't sit in tall towers or give long speeches. Someone working from the shadows, and fast, efficient, and silent. Then one day a new star appeared in the sky over the capital world. It wasn't a real star, but the reflection of a massive ship entering orbit. It was darker than space itself, larger than any Federation vessel, and moved with slow, perfect grace. It didn't broadcast any ID or signal. It just floated there, blocking out part of the sun. Panic spread, fleets scrambled, and the Council demanded communication. None came. Then across every channel a single human voice spoke again, calm, deep, without anger. You built peace on silence. We built strength in it. The message ended there. No threats, no demands. The ship remained for 3 days, unmoving. Then, without noise, it vanished into the dark. After that, nothing in the galaxy felt the same. The Federation's people looked up at the stars differently, with awe and fear mixed together. They understood something larger was coming. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors but as reminders of what the galaxy once was, brave, wild, and alive. The Federation's long peace had made it forget the meaning of struggle. Now humanity's quiet awakening was forcing it to remember. Across the stars, whispers spread. The humans were not preparing for war. They were preparing for something far greater. And for the first time in thousands of years, the Federation felt small again. The sight of the dark ship over the capital world never left the people's minds. Even after it vanished, its shadow seemed to stay. The Federation's leaders tried to speak with confidence again, but their voices shook. They said things were under control, that there was no danger, but no one believed them. Everyone had seen that ship, black and silent, moving with more power than anything built in known history. The people had seen the truth. The Federation was no longer the strongest force in the galaxy. In the months that followed, strange events began happening across many worlds. Old machines that had been broken for centuries suddenly started working again. Abandoned factories came back to life without engineers touching them. Navigation systems updated themselves with new star maps that were more accurate than anything the Federation had ever created. Even damaged satellites lost in deep space began transmitting again. It was as if the galaxy itself was waking up along with humanity. At first, people were afraid. They thought it might be an invasion, some silent takeover, but then they noticed something odd. Everything was better. The new systems used less energy, worked faster, and never failed. Supply ships started arriving on time. Trade routes became safer, and food shortages disappeared almost overnight. The mysterious changes brought order, not chaos. It didn't feel like conquest. It felt like help. The Council, however, couldn't accept it. They called emergency meetings every day, trying to understand what was happening. Their top scientists studied the changes and discovered that the new systems carried traces of human design. The codes, the logic, the structure, all matched old Terran technology, only far more advanced. It was proof that the humans were behind everything. But the question remained, why were they doing this? The High Speaker of the Council ordered communication attempts once again. They sent thousands of messages into the dark. Greetings, offers of peace, even pleas for cooperation. Not one received a reply. The humans said nothing. They simply continued to reshape the galaxy in silence. For the ordinary people, this silence wasn't frightening anymore. They started to trust the unseen hands that made their lives better. Farmers noticed that their weather systems began predicting storms perfectly. Pilots found their ships correcting dangerous courses before they could even react. Miners digging in the outer belts began receiving automated warnings seconds before explosions or collapses could occur. Warnings that saved countless lives. And every time someone checked where these signals came from, the answer was the same. Unknown origin. Untraceable source. Some said humanity had become something more than flesh and bone. They whispered that maybe humans had merged with their own creations, that they now lived as both mind and machine, scattered through data, energy, and stars. The thought sounded strange, but it fit what people were seeing. Humanity had disappeared into silence and darkness, and now it seemed to exist everywhere at once. On one cold planet far from the core worlds, an old observatory picked up a transmission from deep space. It wasn't an image or a voice, just a steady pulse. But when decoded, the pulse carried meaning. It was an ancient human phrase, translated by historians who still studied old Terran languages. The message was short: "We will not repeat your mistakes." Those 7 words spread like fire through the networks. They were calm, not angry, but they struck deep. The Federation had grown lazy, greedy, and proud. Humanity's message sounded like both a reminder and a warning. Soon after, the outer colonies began to change even more. New stations appeared in orbit, built from unknown materials. They didn't carry Federation markings but operated with flawless coordination. They didn't demand taxes or control. Instead, they shared clean energy, built new communication grids, and offered medical solutions that cured diseases once thought permanent. They never asked for repayment. They never even showed who was behind them. But everyone knew. The Federation tried to send fleets to take control of these stations. Every time, their ships would simply lose control before reaching the site. No explosions, no battles. Their systems would freeze and they'd drift back safely toward the nearest port, as if someone had gently pushed them away. It became clear that humanity didn't want war. They just wouldn't allow interference. They didn't need to fight. Their power was too far beyond what the Federation could even measure. As more people realized this, loyalty to the Council began to fade. Citizens started leaving their homeworlds, moving toward the sectors now being quietly transformed by human technology. They said life there was easier, more honest, more efficient. People worked together, not under orders, but under a shared system that seemed guided by unseen logic. Some called it the New Dawn. Others called it the Quiet Revolution. The Council called it betrayal. In secret, the Council planned one last desperate move. They gathered their most advanced warships and prepared to launch them toward the Sol system. They believed that if they could show power, maybe humanity would reveal itself. But when the fleet departed, something unexpected happened. Their navigation computers changed their course mid-flight, rerouting them automatically to safe zones. The captains tried to override it, but the systems refused. The fleet's power cores shut down one by one and the ships floated in silence. Moments later, a new message appeared on every control screen. Simple, calm, and unmistakably human. Do not come here uninvited. The Federation fleet returned home without firing a single shot. Their commanders refused to speak about what they had seen, but rumors said that as they turned back, they caught sight of a glowing line across the darkness, a barrier made of light stretching across the stars, separating human space from the rest. It wasn't made of metal or matter, but of energy so dense that even sensors couldn't see through it. Beyond that light, something vast was moving. As fear turned to awe, something changed inside the people of the Federation. They began to question everything. For centuries, they had been told that peace meant safety, that progress meant control, that the Council knew best. But now they saw another example, a power that had suffered, fallen, disappeared, and then returned stronger than ever. Humanity had no need to conquer. Their strength came from unity, from memory, from rebuilding after ruin. People started to feel inspired again, something they hadn't felt in generations. Artists painted again. Inventors built again. Young explorers talked about venturing beyond the known borders. The spark that humanity had once carried, that restless will to grow, was spreading across the stars like a flame. It wasn't rebellion. It was awakening. The Council tried to contain it, but they couldn't fight inspiration. The harder they tried to silence talk of humanity, the more people admired them. In every classroom, in every street, people spoke of the humans who had endured darkness and come back stronger. They spoke of their patience, their silence, their quiet help. Even those who had never seen a human ship began to feel their presence, not as rulers, but as reminders that progress could never die completely. And then, one night without warning, the Federation's main communication grid flickered. Every channel, every broadcast, every signal went dark for exactly 1 minute. When the systems came back, a single sentence appeared on every screen across the galaxy. "We are awake." No one knew where it came from. It didn't come from Sewell or any known source. It came from everywhere at once. That message changed everything. The Federation Council tried to call it a hack, but no one listened. People cheered. In cities across hundreds of worlds, lights flashed in celebration. In that single moment, the galaxy understood that the age of waiting was over. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as something else, as the spark that would light the galaxy again. No one knew what would happen next. Some believed the humans would reveal themselves soon. Others thought they would remain unseen, guiding quietly from the shadows. But one thing was clear. The Federation's rule, long and proud, was ending not through war, but through awakening. The humans didn't destroy the Federation. They simply made it irrelevant. And far away, beyond the curtain of stars on a planet once thought dead, a single blue world glowed again. From space, lights traced across its surface like veins of life. In its orbit hung ships that looked nothing like those of the past. Graceful, silent, strong. And if someone had been there to listen, they would have heard a voice carried through the emptiness, calm and certain. We were forgotten, but we never forgot. After the message, "We are awake," appeared across every screen in the galaxy, the universe seemed to hold its breath. For a long moment, everything stopped. Ships in space, trade routes, conversations. People just stared at those 3 words glowing softly in the air. They were calm words, not threatening, but powerful enough to shake every heart. Something about them felt real, undeniable, and deeply human. The Council tried to act quickly. They ordered a blackout of all networks, trying to erase the message before panic spread. But it was too late. People had already recorded it, copied it, shared it through their personal devices. Within hours, it was everywhere again. Painted on walls, written in light shows, whispered in songs. Across the Federation, citizens began to realize they were living in a new era. The long silence of the stars had ended. The Council gathered in emergency session. They sat in their tall chamber, surrounded by screens and data streams showing every world under their rule. The leaders looked tired, not from lack of sleep, but from fear of what they couldn't control. For the first time in living memory, they didn't know what to say. How do you lead when your people stop listening? They sent another wave of messages toward the Sol system, begging for dialogue. "We wish to meet," they said. "We come in peace. We want understanding." No answer came. The silence was heavier now, not empty but watchful, as if someone was deciding whether they were worth replying to. Out among the outer colonies, people began to notice new patterns in the sky. At night, strange formations of light appeared, sometimes circles, sometimes long lines stretching across constellations. Astronomers soon discovered that these lights weren't stars at all, but fleets of ships moving in perfect synchronization. They didn't follow Federation routes. They were moving between uncharted systems, mapping and connecting them with incredible speed. Some said humanity was building something vast, a network that spanned the whole galaxy. Meanwhile, life within the Federation continued to change quietly. Machines became smarter, energy systems became cleaner, and diseases that had plagued entire species simply vanished. Hospitals reported mysterious recoveries. Crops grew faster and storms stopped forming in populated areas. It was as if an invisible hand was balancing everything, repairing what had been broken for centuries. Ordinary people called it the Great Fix. To them, it didn't feel like an invasion. It felt like care. The Federation officials tried to take credit again, claiming it was their own new technology, but no one believed them anymore. Everyone knew who was behind it. Humanity was helping again, not as soldiers or conquerors, but as silent architects reshaping the galaxy from within. In the streets, conversations changed. For generations, people had been taught to fear change. Now they began to crave it. They spoke of purpose, of motion, of rebuilding the old fire that the Federation's comfort had put out. They no longer wanted endless peace built on control. They wanted growth, discovery, the unknown. And they began to look toward the dark sector where the humans lived, imagining what their world might be like. Small, independent groups started forming. Scientists, engineers, artists, and travelers, all inspired by the humans, began leaving Federation space. They wanted to find the places where human technology was appearing, to learn from it, maybe even make contact. The Council tried to stop them, but too many left. Some vanished into the stars, never to be heard from again. Others sent back faint messages, describing shining worlds filled with order and beauty, places where everything worked perfectly. Then their signals would fade, as if they had gone beyond reach. Rumors began spreading that humanity was building a new kind of civilization, one that didn't have borders or politics, only structure and cooperation. A system guided not by power but by purpose. People whispered that they were creating the foundation, a place where every world could function together as one living system. It wasn't ruled through fear but through understanding. No one knew if it was true, but the thought gave hope. Inside the Federation, however, the rulers were desperate. Their control was slipping away. Trade partners were switching to human technologies. Colonies were declaring independence, and even military officers began resigning. Many of them said the same thing. We serve the future, not the past. The Council could only watch as their empire, which had lasted for eons, began to crumble without a single shot fired. In the middle of this quiet chaos, a small cargo ship traveling near the border detected a signal unlike any before. It wasn't a message of words, but of images, clear, bright, and impossible to fake. It showed vast fleets of human ships surrounding a star, working together like a swarm, building structures the size of planets. The light from that star seemed to pulse with life, spreading across the network of ships. The cargo crew recorded the signal and sent it to the nearest station. Within hours, the whole galaxy had seen it. The humans weren't hiding anymore. They were showing the future they were building. The Council called it a threat. They said the humans were preparing for war, gathering forces to dominate the galaxy. But most people didn't see it that way. To them, it looked like a miracle. It looked like creation, organized, peaceful, powerful. It was everything the Federation had once promised to be but never became. A week later, something incredible happened. Every world connected to the Federation's communication grid received a direct transmission. The screens went white for a few seconds, then cleared to show a human figure, not fully visible, more like a silhouette surrounded by light. The voice was calm, warm, and human in every sense. For too long, the voice said, the stars have been asleep. You built walls to keep peace, but peace without progress is decay. We did not return for war. We returned because life must keep moving forward. The Federation's time has ended. The Age of Awakening begins. Then the image faded. The signal ended. But those words stayed, echoing in every mind. The Age of Awakening begins. The Council tried to deny it, saying it was a digital illusion, but the people didn't care. They felt something deeper. A connection. A shared heartbeat that ran through every system. Even those who had never seen Earth or known what it meant to be human could feel the weight of that message. It wasn't a command. It was an invitation. After that, things changed even faster. The Federation's central systems began shutting down, not through attacks but by design. The humans had already taken control of the networks months ago. Now they were turning them off one by one, so that each world would learn to stand on its own. It was their way of forcing growth, of ending dependence. Panic broke out among officials, but ordinary citizens adapted quickly. They formed local councils, rebuilt communities, shared knowledge. They realized they didn't need distant rulers to survive. For the first time in ages, people began to think for themselves again. They invented new tools, built new industries, and cooperated with neighbors instead of waiting for orders from above. The old flags of the Federation started coming down quietly, replaced by new emblems, symbols of unity, of balance, of renewal. Some worlds painted the human circle symbol beside their own as a sign of gratitude. The Federation's last great broadcast was a desperate attempt to stay relevant. The High Speaker addressed the galaxy one final time, saying that humanity's interference would lead to instability and chaos. But even as he spoke, the signal began to distort. A soft hum filled the background, and then a human voice replaced his. Instability, it said, is the beginning of motion. The broadcast ended there. The council chambers went dark. Their communication lines never came back online. After that day, the Federation no longer existed as one empire. Its worlds were still there, its people still alive, but its power was gone. What replaced it was not war or ruin, but renewal. The humans didn't take over the galaxy, they gave it back to itself. They had become both guides and guardians, shaping the universe not with control but with quiet precision. Out in deep space, beyond the last Federation border, a single ship drifted close to the shining network humanity had built. Its captain looked out through the viewing glass and saw something that took his breath away. Millions of lights moving together, like stars breathing in rhythm. And in the center of it all, glowing bright blue, was the world once called Earth. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Deep down, everyone already knew the truth. The humans were not coming. They were already here, and they had never really left. When the Federation's control finally collapsed, most people expected chaos to follow. But what came instead was something no one had predicted: calm. The galaxy did not fall apart. Trade ships still traveled between worlds, markets stayed open, and communities began to run themselves. The stars didn't care about the fall of an empire. They simply kept burning, steady and silent as life went on. The humans did not step in to rule. They stayed quiet, working in ways no one could fully see. Their presence was felt through small things: a power grid that never failed, a broken satellite that suddenly started working again, or a planet's weather system that adjusted itself before disaster struck. It was like the universe had grown new instincts, and those instincts were human. At first, people were nervous. They didn't know if they could live without the old systems, the endless rules, and the leaders who used to tell them what to do. But as weeks turned into months, something started to change. People began to look around and see what they could do for themselves. Engineers fixed old machines. Farmers learned how to grow crops without imported supplies, and teachers began writing their own lessons. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was alive. The idea spread fast that maybe this was what the humans wanted all along. Not control, not revenge, but freedom. They had seen the galaxy trapped in comfort and dependence, and they had decided to wake it up. That thought gave people hope. It made them believe in something bigger than power or politics. It made them believe in themselves again. But not everyone saw it that way. There were still worlds that refused to let go of the old ways. Some former Federation commanders built small armies, claiming they would restore order. They painted the human awakening as a danger, a trick to weaken the galaxy before domination. They gathered ships, rallied frightened citizens, and promised to take back what was theirs. For a short time it worked. Their fleets moved through the void, seizing smaller colonies that were struggling to survive. They broadcast messages declaring the rise of a new Federation. But then something happened that stopped them cold. One night, every ship in their fleet received a single signal. It wasn't a weapon or a command. It was a recording, the same one that had once silenced the galaxy. A human voice spoke, calm and clear. "You cannot rebuild what time has already ended. Evolution doesn't ask for permission." The message repeated once, then all their ships lost power. They floated silently for hours until their systems slowly rebooted. After that, the commanders never tried again. No one was harmed. No one was punished. Humanity didn't need to destroy anyone. They simply reminded everyone that progress moves forward, not backward. The message spread like fire, and soon even those who had resisted began to join the rebuilding efforts. Out in the colonies, the transformation was beautiful. Planets that had been forgotten by the Federation began to thrive. Machines powered by unknown energy sources appeared overnight, gently landing near cities and fields. They provided clean water, free power, and communication networks. No one saw who placed them there. The devices just appeared, always working, always silent. People began calling them gifts of the sleepers. In one mining colony, workers discovered a vast underground structure that had been dormant for centuries. When they touched its surface, it came alive, lighting up with soft blue light. The markings were human, old Earth designs mixed with symbols no one could read. The miners sent a message to the nearest settlement, but before anyone could arrive, a single drone descended from the sky. It scanned the site, left behind a glowing crystal, and vanished. When scientists later examined the crystal, it projected a map of the galaxy showing thousands of points connected by light. Some said it was a navigation system. Others believed it was something else, a guide for the next stage of evolution. Everywhere, people began to notice that humanity's work had meaning. Nothing was random. Every gift, every signal, every act had purpose. It was as if humans were teaching the galaxy, step by step, how to grow beyond what it had been, not by words, but by example. Even the smallest children could feel it. They started asking new kinds of questions, not about fear or rules, but about creation and possibility. Why do the humans stay hidden? They asked. Why don't they show themselves? Teachers didn't have clear answers, but they would smile and say, maybe they want us to find them in our own time. There were moments when people thought they saw them, though. Some travelers spoke of shadowy figures walking on the surfaces of new worlds, tall human shapes surrounded by light. Others claimed they heard soft humming from the stars when they closed their eyes. The stories were endless, blending truth and wonder. But one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer just a species. They had become something more. A presence. A pulse within the cosmos itself. As decades passed, the galaxy began to heal. The scars left by centuries of Federation rule slowly faded. Worlds that had been stripped of life were reborn with green forests and blue oceans. Old rivalries dissolved and cooperation became natural again. Every race, every culture began to understand that survival wasn't about control but balance. And everywhere, quietly guiding them, was the touch of humanity. But even peace can bring questions. Who decided what came next? What if the humans' plan wasn't finished? Some thinkers believed this was only the beginning. That humanity had awakened not just to fix the galaxy, but to prepare it for something greater. They pointed to the energy readings coming from the outer rim, massive surges of power forming in the black void, unlike anything ever recorded. It was as if the edge of the universe itself was changing. The Council no longer existed, but its archives had been preserved. In those records, researchers found fragments of ancient data, reports from long before the Federation's founding. They spoke of a human experiment, a project called the Continuum, which aimed to connect all living systems across the stars through energy and thought. The Federation had buried those files, calling the project dangerous. But now it seemed the humans had finished what they started. The more scientists studied the galaxy, the more they saw it. The pattern. Every planet that had received human influence was glowing faintly in the same wavelength, invisible to the eye but clear on instruments. The glow formed lines connecting world to world until the entire galactic map looked like a vast web of light. It was alive. It was moving. Humanity had turned the galaxy into one giant organism. People began to feel it too, a strange connection across distance. Farmers on distant worlds could sense storms before they came. Engineers thousands of light years apart found themselves designing the same inventions at the same time. Artists painted visions they had never seen, yet matched places others were discovering. It was as if the galaxy itself was beginning to share one mind. And deep within that new consciousness, something stirred, something ancient and human. A group of explorers traveling through the dark rim finally sent back images of a massive structure floating near the galactic edge. It wasn't a station or a ship. It was something far bigger, a sphere of light and metal surrounding a cluster of stars. The explorers tried to scan it, but their systems overloaded instantly. Before their connection cut out, they managed to transmit one final message. "It's not a weapon," the captain said. "It's breathing." That was the last anyone heard from them. But a few days later, a signal reached every inhabited world. It was simple, a low tone, soft and steady, followed by a heartbeat sound. Then a voice spoke, the same calm human voice that had once ended the Federation. "Life continues." The message ended. But that single phrase spread through the galaxy like light through glass. People repeated it in songs and books and conversations. It became the new motto of the era. Life continues. And somehow everyone knew what it meant. Humanity wasn't gone. They were part of everything now. In the air, in the data, in the light of the stars. The galaxy had entered a new age, not of domination or rebellion, but of awakening. The humans had not just returned. They had transformed what it meant to exist, and even though no one could see them anymore, everyone could feel them. Every pulse of light, every movement of energy carried their touch. Somewhere beyond the rim, past the oldest stars, something vast was still building. The humans were still working silently, patiently, shaping the next chapter of creation. The galaxy watched, waiting, wondering what would come next. And through that waiting, one truth remained clear. Humanity had awoken from the dark, and the universe itself was now wide awake with them. Generations passed, and the memory of the old Federation became nothing more than a lesson in history. The young didn't even know what it felt like to live under its rule. They grew up free, guided not by orders but by curiosity. They built lives that were peaceful yet full of purpose. The galaxy had changed, not through war or conquest, but through quiet transformation. Across countless worlds, people spoke of humanity as something greater than a single species. They were the pulse within the stars, the unseen architects who had reminded everyone what life could become. The humans had awakened the universe from its long sleep, and in doing so they had given birth to something new. The web of light that stretched between worlds had grown stronger. It pulsed like a living network, connecting minds, systems, and even nature itself. A farmer on one side of the galaxy could feel when rain was coming on another world. A musician could hear melodies from distant cultures before they were ever played. Scientists didn't work in isolation anymore. They shared thoughts directly, across distances that once took years to cross. The galaxy had become one living being, countless hearts beating together. No one ruled it. No one needed to. Every world took care of its own people, yet each was linked to all others. Decisions were made through consensus, not command. Arguments still happened, but they never turned to violence. There was no hunger, no desperation, no endless competition. For the first time in history, the universe was balanced. Still, one mystery remained: the humans themselves. No one had seen them for ages. The machines they had left behind still worked, maintaining perfect order, but their creators seemed to have vanished into the deep dark. Some believed they had merged completely with the energy network. Others thought they had moved beyond the galaxy, continuing their endless journey of creation. Whatever the truth was, everyone agreed on one thing: humanity had changed everything. Every year, people celebrated the Day of Awakening. It was a time of remembrance and gratitude, when worlds across the stars lit their skies with soft white light, the same color as the message that once appeared long ago: "We are awake." Children listened to stories of how the Federation fell and how the humans rose again, not as conquerors but as guardians of life itself. These stories were simple, told around fires or beneath glowing domes. They weren't about power or fear, they were about hope. But deep in the void, beyond the reach of even the brightest stars, something vast was stirring. Explorers who traveled near the galactic edge began sending strange reports. They spoke of a soft hum that vibrated through their ships, a sound that wasn't mechanical but alive. Some said it was the heartbeat of the humans, still echoing, still growing. A small crew once followed that sound. They traveled farther than anyone had before, crossing regions of empty space where no starlight reached. For months they floated in silence, guided only by the hum that called to them. Then one day their sensors detected something ahead, a shimmer, faint but steady. As they moved closer, they realized it wasn't a star or a planet. It was light, pure, constant, endless. The crew couldn't describe what they saw. It wasn't a single object, but an ocean of brilliance expanding in every direction. Inside that ocean were structures too vast to comprehend: rings, spirals, and bridges made of light, connecting whole clusters of stars together. They had no engines, no metal, no sound. They simply existed, alive and radiant. And in that light, they saw shapes moving, not ships, not beings, but patterns. They looked human. One of the crew recorded the moment, whispering softly, "They never left. They became the stars," then the signal cut off. Their ship was never found again. But their last transmission spread across the galaxy like a wave. People wept when they heard it, not in fear but in awe. The mystery was over. Humanity had not vanished. They had evolved beyond form, beyond limitation. They had become part of creation itself. After that, the galaxy entered what many called the Second Dawn. Energy flowed freely between systems. New kinds of life began to appear, hybrids of matter and light, born from the harmony of the network humanity had built. Some could live in space without ships, gliding through energy currents like birds through wind. Others could communicate through thought alone. The line between biology and technology disappeared. And yet, through all the wonder and progress, one truth remained clear. Everything had started because one species, small, fragile, and once forgotten, had refused to stay silent. Humanity had awakened not just themselves but the universe. Their legacy wasn't in monuments or empires, but in every living thing that now thrived in balance. Everywhere, people spoke their name with respect, not worship. They didn't see the humans as gods, but as reminders of what courage and unity could achieve. They had faced extinction, darkness, and isolation, and instead of surrendering, they had rebuilt themselves and the stars around them. That was what made them powerful, not their machines, but their will to rise. On one distant planet, long after the last trace of the Federation had faded, a child stood beneath a quiet sky. The stars above shimmered gently, and one of them pulsed brighter than the rest. Steady, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. The child pointed at it and asked, "Who are they?" An old teacher smiled softly. "Those," the teacher said, "are the ones who woke us up." The child frowned, trying to understand. "Will they come back?" The teacher looked up for a long moment before answering. "They never left," the teacher said. "They are everywhere now. When you speak kindly, when you build something good, when you help someone without reason, that's them, living through us." The child smiled and whispered, "Then we are all part of them." And in that moment the sky seemed to shimmer brighter. As if answering the child's words years later, explorers found an ancient relic floating near the edge of the known universe. It was a small metallic sphere, simple and silent. When they touched it, it projected a single image in the earth, blue and bright, surrounded by countless stars. Beneath it appeared one final message written in plain words: "Life learns, life changes, life continues." The explorers didn't know who left it there or how long it had been drifting. They only knew it was meant to be found. They sent it back to the Central Archive, where it was preserved as humanity's last gift to the galaxy. And from that moment the message spread again, not as fear or warning, but as truth. The humans had become the teachers of existence itself. They had proven that no darkness could hold life forever, that even in silence the will to grow could not die. In time, their story became the foundation of every culture. It was told in poems painted in colors carved into stone. It reminded people that no matter how far they advanced, they must never forget what made them strong: compassion, curiosity, and courage. And somewhere, beyond the veil of visible stars, perhaps the humans watched quietly, not as rulers, not as ghosts, but as proud witnesses to what the universe had become. The light they had sparked so long ago now burned in every heart, every world, every mind. The Federation had once reigned for eons, believing it had achieved perfection. But perfection without growth is death. Humanity had shown the truth, that only through change can life stay alive. The galaxy would never be the same again. It was awake, alive, and still evolving. And though no one could see them, the whisper of humanity remained, a promise carried by the stars themselves. We are awake. We are one. We continue.